This is a story about a married couple resisting temptation while trying to stay loyal. As the wife encounters her old lover, the husband goes on a trip with his attractive colleague. The movie opens up with Joanna and her husband Michael in a taxi on their way to a business party. However, we notice that neither of them is in a good mood, and we soon find out why. We've taken just a few hours earlier as we see them rushing to get ready on time. Joanna puts on her outfit briefly as Michael waits for her to step out. After cutting the lights and turning everything off, they get into a taxi and head to their destination. She notices that Michael is not that thrilled to be going to the party, which makes her laugh. Arriving at their destination, they get out of the taxi when Joanna notices that he doesn't have the wine. His eyes widen as he realizes that the wine is in the taxi, so he runs after the car. He manages to get the bottle back, but Joanna stops him before they enter the party to cheer him up. Looking deep into his eyes, she gives him a reassuring look which relaxes him. After sharing a sweet kiss and hug, they finally enter the room. Michael whispers, "I love you," into her ear before disappearing to grab a drink, but she stays focused on his colleague and his romantic story about his girlfriend. Some time goes by as they get lost in the conversation before Joanna notices that Michael isn't by her side. Looking around, she asks for him, and his colleague points to the balcony. She's caught off guard, seeing her husband with his coworker, but she tries to play it cool. To observe them more, she lies about going to the bathroom, but stays and watches her husband cozying up with his coworker. When they walk back in, she decides to introduce herself, and is surprised to find out that his coworker Laura wants to read her book. On the other side of the room, they see their coworker trying to get with a girl named Cynthia. While the guys think he has no chance, Laura calls him attractive. Joanna watches as her husband asks Laura why she turned him down, sensing some kind of tension in his voice. Regardless, she stays quiet and later decides to ask Andy about her. He reveals that she's a good worker and colleague, but what sticks to her is when he reveals that she's working on the same project as them, meaning that she had been on the trip to Los Angeles the previous month, which Michael didn't tell her about. It gets to her, knowing that her husband is hiding something regardless of what it is, so she stays observing them the whole night. Asking him for a glass of wine, she watches as Laura heads to the bar after him. At the bar, as he gets a glass of white wine for his wife, she proceeds to order the same. He hands her what is supposed to be Joanna's glass. Using the time, he waits for another to talk to her. Eventually, they leave the party, but something seems to be off. Joanna is distant, giving him short answers as he wonders what he has done wrong. They arrive back at the apartment, and she stares at him angrily, waiting for him to start the conversation. He keeps to himself, so she decides to comment on how pretty his colleague is while reminding him that he had referred to her as whatever. Finally, she tells him that she has noticed he was the only one she spoke to, making it obvious that she likes him. She also tells him that it's evident he likes her as well, but he twists her accusations to her being drunk and having a drinking problem. They continue arguing and going back and forth until she asks him to admit that he's at least attracted to her. She understands that she's attractive and that he might have a craving for newness, but when he admits to being attracted to her, she gets mad and decides to sleep on the couch. He growls, annoyed that he had done what she asked him to do, and that she still got angry in the end. In the middle of the night, as the rain is pouring outside, Michael decides to make things right. Kneeling next to the couch, he apologizes for whatever she's mad for and asks her to come to bed. However, she doesn't want to, so he prepares dinner so she doesn't feel upset with him. It eventually works, and the young couple converses like nothing has happened. However, as silence falls, he looks straight into her eyes and apologizes for not saying anything about Laura. Shakily, she asks him whether anything happened in Los Angeles, and he assures her that it didn't. After enjoying some eggs on toast, they finally go to bed, but something seems to be keeping Joanna awake. She asks whether they got married too soon, but he reminds her that they had a relationship of 4 years beforehand. His answer doesn't make her feel better, so she asks whether their relationship is still the same after many years, but he thinks it's even better. She laughs in disbelief and asks how he can be so sure. The last couple of weekends had been it for him, he explains. There's no fooling around between them because they're honest with each other, and that is why he thinks their relationship has only gotten better. Waking up in the morning, she notices the packed suitcase on the bed and hears Michael in the shower. Getting an idea, she grabs a notepad and a pen and writes him a note that she sneaks into one of his shirts, completely unaware that the note will eventually save their marriage. They get ready for the day together, and she heads to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Before he leaves, he asks her to do some writing, as he wants her to finish her second book. She smiles, knowing that she'll keep on procrastinating, but gives him a nod either way. They hug and kiss before he eventually leaves for the train. As the co-workers gather at the station, Joanna can be seen cleaning up around the house. Despite promising his wife nothing she needs to worry about, he can't help but admire Laura's figure. After doing some chores around the apartment, Joanna decides to grab a cup of coffee from the local coffee shop. However, what she does not expect is to run into her old love Alex. Shocked, she struggles to find the words to say as he stares in front of her smiling. He lets her know that he's in New York for an interview, and because he's running late, he asks to meet later. She agrees, but as he tries to leave, she suggests giving him her number. However, he reveals that he still has it. As Joanna spends her afternoon writing, we see that Michael and his team have arrived at their destination. In the afternoon, she receives a call from Alex, and they make dinner plans. Seeing him after such a long time, and hearing his voice had only reminded her of their memories. Going to the bookshelves, she takes out the book where she has pictures of him in it. Looking at the pictures, she can't help but feel sad for the times they'll never have a chance to repeat. Regardless, she gets up and decides to get herself dolled up for him. Putting on an elegant dress, she grabs her purse and coat and leaves the apartment. After walking for a while, she finally gets to the hotel, and as she enters the lounge, she sees Alex waiting for her at the bar. They hug each other, and he tells her that she's beautiful, before sitting down to catch up. He orders drinks for them, so she asks about his work, and he reveals that his book is finished. Excited, she asks to read it, but he tells her that it's in French, knowing that she doesn't speak the language. He notices her strange behavior, but she reveals that it's strange to see him in New York as he doesn't belong in the city. Changing the topic, she asks him to tell her something that counts, and he lets her know that it's been too long since they saw each other. Smiling, she asks for something personal and whether he's seeing someone. He hums, confirming that he is, and uncovers that he has been for months. It's unusual for him to see someone for more than a month, so she's surprised to hear that he's given her more time than any other. He chuckles, raising his glass for a toast. While they're catching up over some drinks, Michael can be seen at a business dinner. Although they're there to discuss business, Laura doesn't miss the chance to give him flirty looks, and he catches them every time. Back at the lounge, Joanna admits that Alex has come at the right time, so he assumes that she's getting a divorce. They're not getting a divorce, but she admits that she thinks of him every time they have problems, and it looks like she has called him to come through her thoughts. He smirks, knowing that she thinks of him all the time, and suggests they go to his room. Joanna stops and stares at him in disbelief. He starts laughing before telling her he's joking. Instead, he invites her to his business dinner. She declines, claiming that she wouldn't feel comfortable interrupting his meeting. However, he tells her that he's leaving in the morning and assures her that the partners are his longtime friends. In the end, she agrees, so he gets up to pay. By the time they got into the cab, Michael had already finished the business dinner. He decides to call Joanna as he gets a weird feeling, but we see her not answering his call as she sits in the can with Alex. He notices that her husband is calling her, and when she doesn't answer, a smirk grows on his face. Because Joanna doesn't answer his call, Michael decides to have a drink with Laura, despite Andy telling him not to. Regardless, we see Alex and Joanna waiting for his friends to arrive at the bar. They can't help but feel awkward around each other, but know that the feelings are still there. As his friends arrive, they sit at a table. The husband, Truman, can't help but ask whether they're friends with benefits. They all laugh before Alex tells him that they won't answer his questions. Finally, he asks how they met, and Alex lets her tell the story. Joanna reveals that they met in Paris while she was writing her first book, which had been 4 years ago. Curious, Truman asks what she writes, and she tries to move past the question without mentioning her book, but Alex tells Truman all about it. Given that it wasn't received well, Joanna is self-critical, but Alex argues that she had gone to the wrong publishing house. Over in Philadelphia, we see Michael and Laura enjoying a drink at a local bar. He asks whether she wants another one, and her answer surprises him. Looking straight in front of her, she tells Michael that she'll have another drink if the guy in a green top leaves. Puzzled, he asks why, and she tells him that she has always put the responsibility of decision-making on others, so she avoids feeling responsible. It had all started when she was just a child, but now it's a way for her not to feel guilty. Eventually, the man leaves, so she asks for another drink, but before he can order, she suggests they go somewhere else. Over in New York, the dinner seems to be going smoothly until a friend of Joanna comes to say hi at the table, feeling like she just got caught. She keeps the conversation short and doesn't introduce her to the table when she asks where Michael is. The friend leaves quickly, and being naturally curious, Truman asks who Michael is. Once Joanna reveals that he's her husband, silence falls on the table and they focus on their food. Stepping outside the bar, Laura and Michael decide to take a walk to the hotel, and as they're walking, she asks about Joanna. Surprised, he asks where the topic of his wife had come from, and she claims that she had asked randomly. He calls Joanna great, revealing that they've been together since college. As they get to the hotel, he sneaks to the men's bathroom to call Joanna again. She answers, but as she does, he can hear music in the background. Puzzled, he asks whether the noise is coming on her end, and she gaslights him into thinking that it's just his phone. Their connection isn't as great, so she asks him to call her the following day. As he hangs up the phone, a million thoughts run through his mind as he keeps thinking of the worst. Nevertheless, he goes to the hotel bar with Laura, and as they sit down, she decides to ask about their trip to Los Angeles. Given that they had been sitting in a booth, she had noticed his hand pressed up against her. So now she wondered whether it had been on purpose. With so much lust in his eyes, he lets her know that he had to keep it pressed against her so it wouldn't have been elsewhere. Not able to resist him, she leans in. And even though he's hesitant at first, he leans in as well, and they share a quick kiss. "I'm married," is all he says, but she assures him she's well aware. He wonders whether it would have been the same if she was married, and she lets him know that nothing would have changed for her. Wanting to know more about his marriage, she asks whether he's happy and whether he's ever cheated. He assures her that his marriage is great, and because it is, he hasn't cheated. But when she asks whether he's thought about it, he takes a while to answer. Knowing that he had, she asks what has made him not do it. He admits to thinking of Joanna and assumes that he would regret it if he did it. Given that she's flirting with a married man, he asks her whether she has ever cheated, and she reveals that she's never because she never wanted to. Back in New York, Truman's wife takes out a pack of cigarettes and offers Alex one. He agrees, but also invites Joanna with them. She wants to go, but before she has a chance, Truman tells them that she'll be keeping them company. As they exit the restaurant to smoke, Truman takes the opportunity to find out more about Joanna's life. He asks where her husband is, but she gets the sense that he wants to know more. So she gives him a green light on the hardest questions. He starts by telling her about Alex's new girlfriend. And with that, he moves on to whether Michael knows about Alex. Joanna reveals that he doesn't know Alex, nor does he know of him because they'd been on and off. Next, he asks her whether she's faithful, and she assures him she is. Curious, he asks whether he would ever forgive her for cheating. And from what he said to her, she tells him no. And that might be the reason she's faithful. Finally, he asks her what she would say to Michael about their night, and she reminds him that the night hasn't finished yet. While Michael and Laura are getting to know more about each other, Alex and Joanna have already finished dinner. However, as they're conversing outside the restaurant, she remembers that she promised Andy she'd walk the dog, so she lets them know that she won't be coming to the party. Luckily, Alex decides to go with her, so we see them in a taxi on their way to Andy's. Before they arrive, she asks him why he hadn't contacted her the last time he'd been to New York, and he reveals that he wasn't alone. She doesn't say anything and continues to look outside the window, so he grabs her hand to kiss it to make her feel better. They arrive at the apartment, and after looking around for a bit, Alex decides to ask why she isn't writing anymore. She informs him that she is, but admits to feeling doubtful about everything in her life, and even her writing skills. On top of that, she admits that her first book has stuck with her, and its mistakes. He tells her that her first book was good, but she switches the conversation to another topic. She doesn't like the fact that he's in Andy's kitchen with her, and he knows exactly why. Pulling out a chair, he sits down and asks her to remind him how their relationship ended. They start going back and forth blaming each other for not being together. However, Joanna thinks that they're in such a situation because she's married to Michael. It will always be between her, Michael, and whatever set of things Alex has. Confused, he asks what his set of things is, so they go over them. He accuses her of not wanting to be with him, so she reminds him that she visited him in Paris for 2 months only to spend time with him. Still, he tries to blame her, but she openly admits that their relationship is how it is because she doesn't want it to change. Everything changes around her, but the connection she has with him is still the same. The feeling she had after seeing him in the morning has proved that, even after a long time, she's still sure that what she has with him is real. Speechless, he goes to the window to light up a cigarette. She decides to walk the dog, and coming back, she sees him standing by the window. He comes down, and as she stretches the other hand to him, he takes it in his to caress it. However, she pulls her hand away and asks for the key. Confused, he asks what key she's talking about, and they soon realize that they're locked out of the apartment with Andy's dog. Not having any other choice, They take the dog with them to the party and Joanna can't help but laugh about it. Over in Philly, after finishing their second drink, Michael and Laura head to her room, where she grabs some alcohol, towels, and a silky robe before they sneak off to the pool. Despite looking doubtful and seeming like he doesn't want to do anything with her, Michael agrees to keep her company. Alex and Joanna arrive at the party with a dog, and it becomes the main attraction. As they approach Truman and his wife, Joanna heads outside to smoke with her, while Alex drops on the couch next to Truman. Truman laughs as he realizes that Joanna hadn't lied about the dog and finds her honesty quite appealing. He admits to liking his new girlfriend, but claims that he likes Joanna more because she's beautiful, smart, and funny. However, he also knows that she's married, which he understands Alex knows nothing about because he's never married. So, being the good friend that he is, he warns Alex not to let their rekindling go too far because he'll never be able to take away the years she has spent with her husband. Although Alex keeps quiet, the look in his eyes is a sign that he understands. The dim lights light up the pool as Michael and Laura walk into the area. Laura takes off her dress and quickly gets into the water. She calls out after him, letting him know that it's his turn to take off his clothes. Instead of joining her, he hands her a glass of champagne, but she asks him again. Looking at the water, he stands still as he thinks about whether to take off his clothes or not. Eventually, he goes in, but as she admires him, she notices that he's uncomfortable, which makes her giggle. It takes some time for him to get comfortable, and as he's doing so, we see Alex and Joanna being more than comfortable around each other. While everyone else seems to be preoccupied with their problems at the party, Alex asks Joanna to go to the rooftop. They get into the elevator, not forgetting the dog, and she can't help but smile about the romantic gesture. Once they get to the rooftop, she asks whether he remembers the day they first met. They keep adding on things they saw and experienced on that day. But when they get to the dancing part, he brings her close to relive that exact moment. Their hips swaying to the imaginative rhythm in their mind. As their eyes meet and they snuggle into each other, feeling like she's had enough, she asks to go back to the party, but as they enter the elevator, he can't resist the temptation, so he kisses her, more passionately than ever. It takes a lot for Michael to get comfortable around Laura, but once he finds out the truth about her ex, he feels sorry for her. Laura reveals that she had been cheated on previously. However, they still wanted to be together, so she stayed. It was their relationship's best year. The man unfortunately perished, but she admits that even if she were to be with him, she still would have been attracted to him. Michael stays quiet, unsure whether to let go and have fun with Laura or be loyal to Joanna. After the passionate makeout session in the elevator, Joanna and Alex decide to leave the party and go to his hotel room. As soon as they enter the room, Joanna heads to the bathroom where she smells Alex's perfume, wanting the scent to last forever. Regardless, she goes back to the living room where she tells Alex all about her accusing Michael of cheating on her. Alex asks her whether she thinks he's cheating on her, and she shrugs her shoulders. But she knows that she has no right to be mad because she's with another man too. He chuckles before sitting on the couch next to her. Putting her feet in his lap, she wonders what would have happened if she hadn't gone out to grab coffee that morning. He says he would have called, so she asks what would have happened if she'd changed her number. He claims that he would have come to her apartment, but once she asks what he would have done if Michael was there, he simply looks at her before returning to her feet. Curious, she asks why he'd stopped emailing her, and he lets her know that it hadn't been enough. She protests, claiming that it's not hard to ask how someone's doing, but he doesn't listen to her words as he focuses on her body. Kissing her leg, he climbs on top of her, kissing every inch of her body, but she pushes him off, claiming that wouldn't be able to look Michael in the eye if she were to do something more with him. Visibly upset, he pulls away, but reminds her that she had complained about her husband being on a trip with a woman he finds attractive. She defends Michael before she moves to the bed. Silence falls before she comes clean for never telling Michael about their relationship. Alex assumes that Michael would be angry, but she claims that he doesn't have the right to that because she had given Alex up for him. Her words get him thinking, so once she asks about his new girlfriend, he takes off his shoes and climbs into the bed, motioning for her to join him. He reminds her that they only have a couple of hours left together, and he wants to spend them right. She lays down next to him, and although hesitant, she ends up snuggling into his arms. Michael and Laura go back to her hotel room, which is when he decides that he has resisted enough. As they enter her room, he spins her and kisses her passionately while pressing her body against the wall. The morning becomes dreadful for both Joanna and Michael as they wake up next to the people they're not supposed to be with. Although they wake up at the same time, Michael and Laura don't say anything to each other before they get dressed. He tries to talk about what had happened the previous night, but she asks him not to, claiming that he wasn't expecting to lay with her. He gets interrupted by her, asking whether he also didn't think that it would happen a second time. Deciding not to say anything, he sits on the bed and caresses her ankle before leaving the room. As he leaves, her hope goes with him, and she visibly gets upset. In New York, however, Alex and Joanna wake up cuddled in each other's arms. He slowly wakes her, and they get ready for him to leave. Exiting the elevator, they get to the cab when reality hits them. Joanna's eyes start filling with tears as she begs him not to make it difficult. Instead of letting him drop her off, she decides to walk home. Quickly kissing him on the cheek, she tries to leave, but he pulls her back only to give her the most passionate kiss, so beautiful yet so tragic. They hug for the last time before he gets into the cab, leaving her standing in front of the hotel. He's upset about having to leave her behind, and the same can be said about Michael. The guilt eats him alive, and right as he decides to pack his suitcase and return to his wife, he finds the handwritten note Joanna had left him. On the note, she apologizes for overreacting and assures him that she believes he would never cheat. Like icing on a cake, it takes that much for him to crawl back to her. As far as Laura goes, it's evident she's upset about his early leaving, but she doesn't show that around Andy when he tells her the news. Both men share tears for her, and she sheds some tears back. As Alex is waiting for his plane, he goes through some old pictures of when he and Joanna were dating, and he can't help but reminisce about the times they spent together. When it comes to Michael, he spends his whole train ride thinking about the awful thing he had done and what he's going to say to Joanna when he sees her. Joanna, however, decides to take a breather as she returns to the apartment. Kicking off her shoes, she takes off her dress and puts on a robe before going to sit by the window. The memories of her and Alex get to her as well, and she soon starts sobbing quietly. Lost in her thoughts, she doesn't notice when Michael enters the apartment, but notices that she's crying. Surprised to see him back early, she asks him about the presentation, but he lies about finishing up early. Again, he apologizes for the fight, but she asks him not to speak of it. Given that Andy's dog is with them, he suggests they take her for a walk and have lunch. She agrees, and as she gets up to get ready, he stops her and pulls her in for a hug. They share a tight hug, and looking behind her, he sees the high heels she usually wears for special occasions. They pull back, and as they look into each other's eyes, they realize that they've both betrayed each other and their vows.